Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to welcome Mrs. Agata Modzolewska from the Polish Ministry of Culture that will give us an extremely interesting lecture about the losses of Polish cultural properties and pieces of art during many, many years and also during the Second World War. The subject is very interesting and we are happy that you agreed to lecture on that. Please.
Thank you and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a representative of Department for Restitution of Cultural Goods in Polish Ministry of Culture and National Heritage. And today I would like to tell you about the Polish wartime losses in the field of cultural goods. So first of all, there is no other country in the world that would suffer as a result of looting during the World War II as Poland. The losses of cultural property which Poland sustained from 1949 till 1945 resulted both from military action, bombardment of churches, palaces, museums or libraries, as well as from looting by soldiers, the occupying powers administration, corrupt marauders following the army, or by local thieves exploiting wartime confusion. The land, excuse me, um, the land of the Second Republic of Poland saw destruction caused by military action several times over firstly in 1949 from the 1st September from Germany army aggression, from 17th September from the Soviet army, then 22nd of June 1941 when the Germans attacked the USSR, and again from the summer of 1944 to May 1945 when German forces were in retreat from the Red Army. Poland lost almost 70% of its material heritage. Everyone, without exceptions, was subject to losing possession, starting with public institutions, museums, churches, but also private individuals. The exact number of looted artworks is extremely hard to count. The number which was announced after the war, 560,000 works of art, related only to the main collections from the territories of interwar Poland and did not fully present the scope of disaster. At the beginning of the 1949 invasion of Poland, the Polish interwar government wasn't prepared to evacuate and secure museums' collections. Only Polish museum workers individually attempt to conceal the nation's most valued cultural heritage. The best example are the royal treasures of the Wawel Castle in Kraków. The royal accessories, including the Jagiellonian tapestries, were secretly shipped to Western Europe and then to Canada, among other places. After the military action of 1949 finished, the German occupying forces divided Polish territory into two parts, the General Government and land incorporated into the Reich. Cultural property in both parts of the country were treated in different ways. The General Government, which was founded upon Hitler's order and announced by Hans Frank on the 27th of October 1949, contained towns which were centers of Polish culture, Warsaw, Krakow, and also from 1941, Lviv. Soon after conquering Poland, the activities of the occupying forces regarding cultural property was not regulated, and the competencies of practical civil services or the police had not been established. There was a general conviction that they were ownerless or could be freely disposed of. Essentially, the Wehrmacht didn't deal with the issue. Only individual officers, certain members of the SS and the police were interested in cultural property. By October 1949, the Reich Mine Security Officer in Berlin had already sent a special unit to Poland, called Commando Pausen, named after its leader, archaeology professor Peter Pausen. The unit's task was given by Reichsführer SS, the head of the German police Heinrich Himmler, and was to secure prehistoric excavation and monuments in Poland, as German archaeologists suspected that the Poles were falsifying their research. However, on his first trip, on 1st of October 1949, Pausen came with a different aim. He was to bring the Wittstoß altarpiece to Berlin. He completed this assignment at the last moment because the local German authorities didn't want such a precious work to leave the GG, which according to them was evidence of several hundred years of German art in Poland. The next expedition of the unit were a remarkable act of looting. Like many other thefts in Poland's territory, these trips were poorly prepared and often it was only upon arrival that the unit members learned which objects were worth seizing. Commando Paulsen, made up of archaeologists, a variety of artifacts from the Wisłosz altarpiece to the Codex Supraziensis, a Cyrillic literary monument written in Old Slavic canon from the 11th century, as well as four stuffed European bison from the Natural History Museum in Warsaw. This random choice of exhibits made it difficult to recover them. It is difficult to work out where and why a seized object was expedited. The gold medallion of Cesar Jowian, owned by the Archaeological Museum in Warsaw, was taken from Boroczyce by the Commando Paulsen and vanished into thin air with no leads which could direct a search. Moving such object on a large scale was permitted by an order given by Hans Frank on 16th of December 1949 regarding the confiscation of cultural goods. This concerns both public as well as private and church collections, apart from objects, robes and books used during church services. The confiscation were carried out by the Commission for Securing Works of Art in Eastern Occupied Lands, constituted by Kajetan Mulman. The commission was divided into two groups, North and South. The second group was led by Joseph Mulman, Kajetan's brother, and operated in Warsaw. Both groups searched for and confiscated works of art and gathered them in appropriate depots. In Krakow, they were placed in a basement in Wawel Castle, in a mining academy building, and in the storerooms of the newly built Jagiellonian Library. In Warsaw, the central depot was created in the National Museum. Hans Frank himself estimated that by October 1942, 90% of works of art from the General Government have been secured. The confiscation and gathering of movable cultural goods in a few depots was aimed at in restoring the object and taking full control of them. What is not clear is the final destination of the works. There were discrepancies in the declaration. One thing is sure. They were to stay in the depots until the end of the war, and that is what happened, to a large extent. After the war, when testifying to American soldiers, Kajetan Mulman stated that the confiscated objects were have to be incorporated into German collections. This explanation, however, was not convincing. German curators were not interested in taking possession of such a number of exhibits from Polish collections, partly because they did not value them very highly. Hitler's plenipotentiary Hans Posse, who searched for works of art, mainly paintings, for the Führer's Museum in Linz, visited the GG in December 1940 and said that there was nothing in Polish collections apart from works that were well known in Germany that would enrich German museums. The fact that the gallery's works were organized into three groups might reveal this destination. The first group included world-class pieces which could be added to German museums' collections. Examples of work of that class, which notably were to evidence of the reach of German art into Polish territory, were listed by Kajetan Mulman in the luxuriously published album Sichergestellte Kunstwerke im Generalgouvernement. The catalog titled Sichergestellte Kunstwerke listed the most precious works of art seized by Nazis from the territory of occupied Poland during World War II. This inventory was in 5 volumes and it contains 521 works of art. The second grade, classified as not necessarily worthy for the Reich, but of good quality, were stored either in Poland, primarily in the Jagiellonian Library, or at the Deutsche Bank in Berlin. Works of the third grade were usually retained by the occupying administration or the SS for representational purpose, that is, for Germans' homes and offices. The fighting out of government offices or private residence with works of art which had been confiscated from museums or private collections went on throughout the occupation and did not only happen by an official means. The conditions after the fall of the Warsaw Uprising were exceptionally conducive to theft. It was a case of total plunder and systematic demolition of successive quarters of the city. The German side undertook action to save some of Warsaw's cultural property. On 12th of August 1944, Adolf Hitler's brother-in-law, Hermann Fegelein, conveyed an order from Hitler to the head of the German forces in Warsaw, General Erich von den Bach, regarding the protection of Warsaw cultural objects. Obeying the Führer's orders, SS Colonel Moritz Arndt arrived in Warsaw at the head of a group of SS soldiers. He transported collections from Warsaw's museums and libraries, which he regarded as valuable. The workers in Polish cultural institutions were disoriented, but supported Arendt's activities, especially as he left the choice of which object would to be evacuated to them. To a large extent, they were returned to Warsaw in 1946. The western and northern parts of Poland were incorporated into the Reich. The Polish population in these areas was subjected to a process of absolute Germanization. Government offices were established to liquidate Polish goods. On 19th of October 1949, Hermann Goering created the main trustee office for the East, Haupttreuhandstelle Ost, which coordinated the looting of Polish property. Additionally, on 1st of December 1949, the office of the General Trustee for securing German cultural property in the Eastern Territories was set up alongside the HDO. This organization was inspired by the SS Reichsführer and head of the German police, Heinrich Himmler. In the Reich Legal Gazette, a series of regulations were announced regarding the reach of metals and confiscation of Polish property. Of particular significance was the order signed by Himmler on 1st of December 1949, which commanded the confiscation of all cultural property in archives, museums, public and private collections. In accordance with that order, special confiscation squads appeared in occupied terrain. They worked closely with the local police, and from their reports, it can be seen that the exhibits of 15 museums and 5 collections of weapons, a collection of antique vases in Gołchów were secured. 1,100 paintings from private hands were confiscated, 500 pieces of furniture, 33 crates of religious works of art, hundreds of carpets, and 25 crates with objects made of precious metals. The items were mostly stored in the cathedrals and other churches in Poznań, but also in Łódź and Katowice. The more precious items were sent to the Reich Bank in Berlin, and those of lower value were sold, most often in Berlin, and the metal object remelted. The dispatcher of the confiscated goods was Goering. The eastern terrain of the Second Republic of Poland after the 17th of September 1949 were annexed by the USSR. Cities which had been connected with Polish culture and tradition throughout the ages, like Vilna and Lviv, fell into Russian hands. The first step of the occupying forces aimed at moving property in such a way as to obliterate the Polish derivation, and cultural institutions were forced into propaganda activities. These places were generally given new management made up of Soviet Party activists. After the Third Reich's attack on the USSR, the Germans joined the west part of Ukraine to the GG with its capital in Lviv. The remaining eastern terrain went under the government of the Reich Ministry of the Conquered Eastern Terrain. Special services were created which went about looting cultural property. In 1944, when the German forces were being forced back by the Red Army, Cultural objects were under threat of destruction and looting from both sides. The attacking Red Army most often bombarded cities like Lviv. Marauders from the army looted intensively, especially in the terrain belonging to the Reich, which soon became Poland. On the other hand, the retreating Wehrmacht destroyed, blew up, not only bridges and objects of military nature, but also cultural buildings like the Raczyński Library in Poznan. Retreating on the Eastern Front, the German forces transported cultural property from the conquered terrain further to the west. The biggest depots were in Lower Silesia, Saxony, Bavaria, and Austria. The Soviet Union engaged in systematic looting in the end of the World War II, particularly of Germany, seeing this as reparation for damage and looting done by Germans in the Soviet Union. But Soviets, even after Yalta Conference, had engaged in plunder on the former eastern territories of Germany that were to be transferred to Poland, stripping it of anything of value, like Pomerania or Lower Silesia. They moved everything to Moscow and then distributed artworks between museums in USSR. Even Polish communists were uneasy in 1945. The future chairman of the Polish Council of State, Aleksander Zawadzki, worried that the raping of looting by the Soviet army would provoke a civil war. After the war, started a reivindication campaign. The places of the first reivindication campaign just after the war was Lower Silesia, because of the works of art which were there secured by the authority of General Gouvernement. To American occupation zone were moved nearly 80% of Polish works of art. In this zone, Polish reivindication mission led by Karol Streicher could count on help of MFAA officers. From this zone, almost 35,000 works of art were restituted to Poland. Karol Streicher returned to Poland with a transport of almost 30 carriages full of artworks and archives. Witnessing this event is the famous photo of Streicher standing at the Krakow railway station and presenting the Leonardo da Vinci's painting Lady with the ermine unharmed despite its fate. One of the last restitution operations was returning from USSR in 1956 some 12,000 cultural items. However, the real end occurred in 1961 when the Polish treasures, including royal insignia and Jagiellonian tapestries hiding by Polish government in Canada, were recovered. The era of communism prevented any restitution action. Democratic reforms that occurred in Poland after 1989 made it possible to renew the documentation and recovery efforts. A state plenipotentiary for Polish cultural heritage abroad was appointed in 1991. Activities related to gathering data of wartime losses were later undertaken by the Polish Ministry of Culture. Emphasis was placed on gathering information and materials regarding objects destroyed or looted during World War II and registering this information in a database dedicated for this purpose. Our current recovery efforts are made possible thanks to the information gathered in the database in the 1890s. Polish wartime losses nowadays are considered to be a valuable cultural property, lost from public, private, and church collections from within the post-1945 borders of Poland as a result of the Second World War. The subject is today dealt with by the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage and its Department for Restitution of Cultural Goods. The responsibilities of the department include, but are not limited to, collecting information on cultural property lost as a result of World War II from the territory of Poland within its post-1945 borders, maintaining the only national-wide database of wartime losses, maintaining the National Register of Monuments stolen or illegally exported abroad, initiating, coordinating, and conducting searches for lost cultural property, performing restitution activities domestically and abroad, including by delegating experts, coordinating the examination of objects, conducting negotiations, performing legal representation before law enforcement authorities, the prosecutor's office, courts, ensuring the transport of recovered works of art, and promoting the issue of wartime losses. The database of wartime losses contains information on cultural property lost as a result of World War II from the Treaty of Poland after 1945. It is a repository of knowledge, but it's not an official register prescribed by law. It is divided into 23 sections, including painting, sculpture, graphics, furniture, textiles, porcelain, glass, goldsmithing, militaria, numismatic and archaeological collections. So far, over 68,000 records have been entered to the database. The search of artworks is mainly carried out through daily monitoring of the international art market. Restitution of works of art is carried out by the Minister of Culture and National Heritage for the benefit of the State Treasury. Public international law and external national law apply. The method of operation depends on the place where the object was found and its current legal situation. It is very important to inform you that current Polish policy is that artworks which were lost as a result of World War II and not recovered by public agencies or by private persons are the property of Polish state. This means that the Polish government is seeking the return of all the works of art regardless to whom they belonged before the war, whether it was institution or private person. Ownership issues are resolved in the second place based on the civil local law. On May 2017, the Act of Restitution of National Cultural Property was passed. It is the most comprehensive act under the Polish legal system related to the issue of the restitution of cultural property. It should be noted that the Act of the Restitution of National Cultural Property provides that the Minister in charge of Culture and National Heritage is the competent authority to conduct all restitution proceedings in Poland. The Department of Restitution of Cultural Goods cooperates closely with the police, the prosecutors' offices, the border guard, the National Tax Administration, and the investigative service of other countries, including FBI and Homeland Security investigations in the United States. These activities have been made possible to find many lost works of art. The restitution activities of the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage of the Republic of Poland have led to the recovery of over 700 individual objects in recent years. However, many works still remain lost. Among the most valuable are Madonna and Child with a Parrot against the background of a landscape, by Master with a Parrot from the second quarter of 16th century. In 1927, it was purchased from the St. Luke's Gallery in Vienna by the wood industrialist and honorary Dutch consul Karol Raimund Eysert, who later bequeathed his painting collection in his home city. As a result, in January 1931, the Madonna and Child with a Parrot and 21 other paintings made their way to the Bartosiewicz Museum of History and Art in Łódź. During the Second World War, under Nazi occupation of Poland, the city of Łódź was absorbed into the Third Reich. Just prior to the advance of Soviet troops of 19th of January 1945, the Germans stripped the museum of its most valuable pieces, including works by Italian, Dutch, and Flemish artists. These works were sent to the town of Schandau in Saxony, where they were eventually seized by Soviet forces. Diana and Calypso by Peter Paul Rubens. This painting came from the collection of the Poznań Society of Friends as Scientists, to which it was donated in 1874 by Seweryn Jążyński. In 1939, the German occupying authorities confiscated the work for the collection of the Kaiser Friedrich Museum Poznań, which was established to replace the Greater Poland Museum in Poznań. The painting was stolen from the museum storage in late 1930, early 1931. Another one, the conservation of Empress Faustina by Saint Catherine of Alexandria by Hans Folkunbach. This painting was part of the St. Catherine's altarpiece founded by Jan Bonner for his family chapel in St. Mary's Church in Prague. Later, this is the remaining 7 paintings in the series, served as ornamentation for cabinets in the church's treasury. It was seized on 5th of February 1930, with the confiscation notice being signed by Dr. Werner Gurlich. Later, the painting appears in the catalogue Sichergestellte Kunstwerke i Generalgouvernement, bearing the number 23rd. And the most valued and well-known is the portrait of a young man by Raphael. This portrait by Raphael, one of the most renowned artists of the Italian Renaissance, is believed to be Poland's greatest wartime loss. It belongs to the collection of the Czartoryski Museum in Kraków, after having been purchased from the Giustiniani family in 1799. Initially, the painting was put on display in the Gothic house in Puławy. From 1830, it resided with all of the most valuable artworks of the Czartoryski collection in Silesia and was later moved to Paris and then London. In 1992, it returned to the Czartoryski collection in Kraków. Upon the outbreak of the Second World War, it was hidden away in an annex of the palace in Sieniawa, where it rested for a short while before being discovered by the Germans. On 31st of October 1949, the painting was claimed by Special Commissioner for the Protection of Works of Art Dr. Kajetan Mühlmann, while also being reserved by Hans Poser for Hitler's famous Museum of Art in Leeds. The exceptional painting was then taken to Berlin um, and put on a display in an exhibition of seized art. However, the portrait eventually returned to Kraków on order of Governor General Hans Frank, who wanted the painting for his own residence at Wawel Castle. The painting mysteriously disappeared during Frank's westward evacuation in 1945, and its last known whereabouts being Lower Silesia. The search for the painting continues to this day. It should be noted that among the hundreds of thousands of lost works, there were also those by Jewish artists. Artists of Jewish origin, whose artworks are listed in the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage Wartime Losses database, um, are placed here. The Ministry of Culture contains 147 works, including 70 of public nature, by 42 Polish artists of Jewish origin. They can be divided into the following categories: paintings, watercolors, drawing, pastels, prints, woodcuts, lithographs, etchings, and sculptures. It is being beyond my scope to discuss in detail the works of all the 42 aforementioned artists. So in this talk, I will focus on selected example of works by Maurycy Gottlieb and Roman Kramsztyk, listed on our database, as well as several collectors of Jewish origin. Maurycy Gottlieb was born in 1856 in Drohobycz. His father, Isaac, followed the Haskell movement, combining deep religious commitment with modern views, enrolled his children in public schools. Isaac Gottlieb, seeing his son's talent, also organized for him drawing lessons under the tutelage of Michał Godlewski, who taught the boy for 3 years. Then Maurycy went to Vienna, where from 1871 to 1873 he studied under Professors Karl Mayer and Karl von Glass. There, at the Universal Exhibition, he saw paintings by Jan Matejko. All Gottlieb's biographers emphasized that the contact with the works of this artist became a turning point in Gottlieb's development. Matejko, in his painting depicting historical events, cared about their moral and patriotic overtones. This appealed to Gottlieb's artistic sensibility. In the second semester of 1874, Gottlieb became one of the Matejko students at the School of Fine Arts, then briefly went to Vienna, and from the autumn of That year spent a further 2 years at the Academy of Fine Arts in Munich, in the studio of Karl von Piloty, professor of the Academy's keeper. The year 1876 went down in Maurice Gottlieb's biography as a period of extremely intense work. Some of his most important paintings were created during this time. The place where he saw artistic inspiration was the painting gallery of the Munich Pinakothek. Gottlieb was enthralled by the works of old masters from the Netherlands and Italy, and he also became acquainted with the works by Rembrandt. Rembrandt's depictions of Jews strengthened Gottlieb's inner sense of belonging and prompted him to take up an entirely new subject matter. During that period, he created the following Greek works, like Jewish Wedding, Torah Scribe, Self-Portrait, Ashaver, and Shylock and Jessica, which is still a wartime loss. The year the years 1877 and 1878 were the most intensive period of Gottlieb's creative activity. A close relationship with Jacek Marczewski, uh, as well as the sketch on the balcony, may suggest that his work was slowly turning towards symbolism. The romantic emotive study of a young woman was a new phenomenon known in Maurits's creations. The artist died suddenly on the evening of 1670 of July 1879. Gottlieb is the first outstanding artist in the history of Jewish painting in Poland. Above all, he succeeded in breaking down the cultural barriers and existed among Polish Jews with regard to the representational arts. Following his example, in the 1880s, several Jewish artists, who were later highly regarded and popular, took up studies at the Krakow School of Art. Among them were Samuel Hirschenberg, Szymon Buchbinder, Artur Markowicz, Ephraim Maurycy Lilien, Maurycy Trębacz, Leon Wein, and the critic Jan Topas. Maurycy Kramsztyk, another artist of Jewish descent, was also born into a respectable family. His father was a surgeon. After graduating from a secondary school in Warsaw in the autumn of 1903, Roman became a student of the Krakow Academy of Fine Arts. From 1904, he continued his studies in Munich. However, he did not complete his education with a diploma from either academy. In spite of this, as early as 1909, as a 20-year-old, he debuted at the Society of Encouragement of Fine Arts. Roman Kraszczyk quickly became a valued portraitist. Among those portraits, we will find images of the loved ones, people belonging to the Warsaw or Paris artistic circles, personalities from the worlds of politics, children, and really people of exotic origin. A distinct attribute of Kramczyk's technique was the accurate depiction of the individual features of the portraits and the rendering of their characteristic traits. Writing about woman's portrait, Mieczysław Walis noted, "A painter of character becomes at the same time a painter of allure and charm, a portraitist of interesting men, a portraitist of beautiful women." Such a woman was Carlota Bologna, both friend and muse of Kramsztyk, who played the leading role in The Woman Who Desires Sins, a pre-war film directed by Wiktor Biegański. Her portrait was painted around 1942. Unfortunately, only its black and white photograph can be admired today. It was probably burned down during the Warsaw Uprising. According to or quoted Mieczysław Walis, this portrait is one of the most beautiful things Kramsztyk ever painted or drew. It is at least for me, the peak of his creative achievements until now. In the 1930s, Kramsztyk's paintings increasingly merit the term museum. Their coloring becomes ornate, earthy, crisp. During this period, he also took a strong interest in graphics, and while rendering the image of his models, and often reached for ginger brown crayons. These works, reminiscent of Leonardo's figure studies, captive with the sure hand and subtlety of the picture. The outbreak of the Second World War surprised Kramsztyk. who was at the time in Poland. He soon shared the fate of hundreds of thousands citizens of Jewish descent. He was shot dead in the Warsaw Ghetto on 6 of August 1942. A significant contribution of artist life in Pyrrhus was made not only by artists of Jewish origin but also by collectors. It is impossible to mention them all here or to discuss their collections in details, I will therefore limit myself to just a few examples. One of the major collectors, above all Polish paintings, was Leopold Stanisław Cronenberg, a banker, financier, and one of the leaders of the Whites before the January uprising. He took an active part in the cultural and political life of Polish people. Our Wartime Losses database includes the following paintings which were in his abundant collection: Resting in the Tatra Shed by Wojciech Gerson, Traptrot by Apolloniusz Kędzierski, Gypsies Possession by Ludwik Karela, Ballroom in the Royal Baths Łazienki Park, and by Aleksander Gulewski, and also the artworks by Józef Chełmoński, Juliusz Kosak, and Henryk Weissenhoff. The first of these paintings, resting in the Tatra Shed, was successfully recovered when a South African private individual put it up for sale at Sotheby's auction house in London in 2003. Thanks to the joint efforts of the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage and Polish diplomatic missions, the auction was halted, and then the Leopold Cronenberg Banking Foundation joined the negotiation with the owner of the painting. The canvas was successfully recovered, and then, in June 2010, the foundation donated the painting to the collection of the Royal Castle in Warsaw. Another collector, Edward Nathanson, was a well-educated industrialist who was strongly involved in Polish political and cultural life. For example, between 1915 and 1919, he held various positions in the Warsaw municipal authorities. Like Cronenberg, Nathanson also used his wealth to collect works of art. The following paintings for his collection are listed in Wartime Losses database: Kościeliska Valley by Wojciech Gerson, Lisowczyk by Józef Brand, Girl with a Myrtle and Water by Stanisław Wyspiański, Jewish Water Carrier by Józef Chełmoński, Prince Charles Alexander of Lorraine Horse by Jan Matejko, and Italian Woman by Aleksander Gierymski, as well as artworks by Jacek Marczewski, Julian Fałat, Henryk Siemiradzki, Juliusz Kosak, Władysław Czachurski, Władysław Podkobiński, Jan Rosen, Maksymilian Gierymski, and Marcello Bacciarelli. Andrzej Rotwand is a further example of a skillful industrialist who partly used his acquired wealth on purchasing works of art. His collections included, as in the case of Cronenberg and Nathanson, mainly Polish paintings, including Musicians by Stanisław Lenz, From Tatra Mountains, and by Wojciech Gerson, Italian Woman by Anna Bilińska, Help by Józef Borodyński the Younger, Calvary Church by Maksymilian Gierymski, Interior of St. Mary's Church in Kraków by Aleksander Gryglewski, Winter, Napoleon's Retreat from Moscow by Alfred Wierusz-Kowalski, View of the Royal Łazienki Park by Marcin Zalewski, Fox Hunt, Shepherds by the Fire, Spring, and Moonrise by Józef Chełmoński. Also paintings by Juliusz Kosak, Szymon Buchbinder, Julian Fałat, Edward Okun, and Stanisław Masłowski. Finally, it is worth mentioning an art dealer, Abel Gutnayer, one of the greatest antiquarians of the Second Polish Republic, organizer of auctions and exhibitions of works by Polish painters such as Wojciech Kosak, Władysław Czachurski, Józef Brand, Julian Fałat, Jacek Marczewski, Henryk Siemiradzki, Jan Matejko. In search of Polish paintings, he traveled to Paris or Vienna, or brought back to Poland the works of Olga Poznańska, Józef Chełmoński, and Maksymilian Gierymski. The Wartime Masses database contains works that were centrally owned by Abegud Nair at the outbreak of the war, including Austeria by Stanisław Lenz, Portrait of a Man by Józef Zimler, View of the Kufstein Fortress by Aleksander Gieremski. Polish artists of Jewish descent made a significant contribution to the cultural life of Poland at the end of the 19th century, but especially during the 20 years of interwar period. We hope that in the future it will be possible to locate the whereabouts of the plundered artworks by aforementioned 32 artists, as well as those owned by the collectors. The Second World War was a cataclysmic blow to Poland in many respects, including culture. The interwar multicultural country had more than 560,000 registered objects. For this reason alone, every recovered object brings great joy and is of a priceless value. In recent years, the work and commitment of the staff of the Polish Ministry of Culture and National Heritage, Department for Restitution of Cultural Property, was resulted in the return of nearly 700 individual objects. We hope to successfully celebrate succeeding returns. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for a very, very in-depth lecture about so many interesting pieces of art and the history of Polish art during the Second World War. The director of the Polish Institute, Mrs. Magdalena Kusztal, would like to say a couple of words as well.
Once again, for the Department for Restitution from Warsaw, and in this way, also we wish you Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. All the best. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Also, all the best to you.
Thank you. Thank you and see you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.